Wonderhussy here, just driving around the desert backcountry on a chilly winter's day, about to check out a place I've been really curious about for a long time. The Ivanpah Solar Power Plant. That's right, if you've ever driven along Interstate 15 between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, you've probably seen these 3 giant glowing towers off in the desert on the north side of the road. And if you're anything like me, you've been totally fascinated by them because they're just so otherworldly and surreal looking. See, I just drove in from the backside over these mountains here behind the solar plant, and well, from up here, there's this amazing vantage point. I thought I would stop here first, kind of get an overlook, show you what we're dealing with here, and well, I climbed up on top of my car to get an even better vantage point. So there's these 3 towers, each tower is surrounded by mirrors. Okay, and I am most definitely not an engineer or any kind of scientist, so this is my limited layperson's understanding of what's going on at this power plant and how they're generating electricity. Okay, most solar fields that you see are what's called photovoltaic, PV, and those are those flat black panels that you see. A lot of people put them on the roof of their homes, or you see them, well, out here in the desert anyways. And as a matter of fact, there's one way back there in the distance. You see a lot of these photovoltaic panel farms where there's just panels after panels after panels after panels covering sometimes acres. And I'm not sure how that works. Somehow the panels themselves absorb the sun and transform it into energy somehow. I don't really know how that works. These 3 towers here operate on a totally different technology. It's called concentrated solar, I think it's a concentrated solar thermal plant is what we're looking at, a CSP, concentrated solar power. And that's because these towers are surrounded by these mirrors, and they're actually called heliostats. That's the technical name for them. But they're mirrors that are programmed to sort of turn and follow the path of the sun as it goes through the sky throughout the day, so that it constantly maintains the optimal angle, I guess, that the sun's rays hitting the mirrors will be reflected directly into those 3 towers. Okay, I don't know if my layperson's description made any sense to any of you, but essentially what's going on here is the tower there in the middle is full of molten salts. That's right, molten salts. Plural. I guess it's not just like table salt. That was my initial understanding. I thought, holy cow, these solar rays are being reflected up into these towers full of salt, and it's so hot that it's melting the salt, boiling the salt, and generating power. Well, I guess that's not exactly what's going on. It's not table salt that's inside these towers. It's a mixture of potassium chloride and sodium chloride, I think. And I'm not a scientist or a chemist. I didn't even take chemistry in high school or college, so what do I know? Anyway, what's going on here is all these mirrors are reflecting the sun's rays directly into these towers full of these molten salts, causing it to boil. And why they use these molten salts instead of just boiling water to power the generator? Well, I guess molten salts retain energy better, or retain heat better than just water. So obviously, once the sun goes down behind these mountains here, which is not too far from now, well, there's not going to be any more solar rays being blasted into these towers, and so there's not going to be any more power being generated. So I guess by keeping the towers full of molten salts, they retain the heat of the sun well after the sun goes down. And so, I don't know, somehow that allows this plant to continue generating energy, I guess, even when the sun isn't in the sky. Not really sure. Don't quote me on it. I'm just here to poke around and see something weird, not give a scientific explanation. I'm sure there's way better YouTube videos explaining exactly what the technology is that's going on here. But it's friggin' freezing today. It's December 10th, and my car thermometer said it was 39 degrees up here. So I want to get down off the top of my car first, and then I want to get down off the side of this dang hillside and down to the lowlands where it might be at least a few degrees warmer, and where we might be able to get close enough to the power plant to see some of them mirrors up close and personal. Okay, while we're driving up to the perimeter, or as close as we can get to this concentrated solar power plant, a little background. This place was built in 2014, and it was meant to provide, I think 2 of the towers were providing power, or are providing power to PG&E, which is Pacific Gas and Electric, and that's the utility for Northern California. The other tower goes to Consolidated Edison, which is the power utility that provides power for Southern California. We are in California. We're just barely across the state line in California from Nevada. So most of the people, I guess all of the people who work at this power plant live in Nevada, but the power all goes to California. And I guess there was some controversy over this place. Actually, there was quite a bit of controversy on a few fronts. First, people were upset, I guess, because they got some kind of government, not a subsidy, but some kind of specially subsidized government loan, I guess, to build this place, even though it is privately owned. In fact, Google invested, I think, well, it cost $2 billion to build. I want to say Google invested like $160 million into it. But so Google did invest in it, and a bunch of big energy companies invested in it, and the government gave them some sweet deal on a loan. So there was some belly aching about that. And then too, some people say that it's really not that clean and green of energy, because they do have to use, I think they use natural gas in the mornings to fire up the generators, because they've been sitting there all night when the sun was down. And I don't know exactly how it works with, I know that molten salt stores some energy, but there's some needs in the mornings to get this generators fired back up. They have to use fossil fuels, and so there is a little bit of fossil fuel output. Okay, so now we're coming down onto the valley floor, and if I zoom in here, you can really see this tower a lot closer and maybe kind of get an idea of what's going on. I mean, to be honest, I don't even really have an idea of what's going on, but I know that they're boiling this molten salt solution in the tower, and somehow the steam from that is powering turbines, I guess, down below. You can kind of see there's a building at the base, and there's those big pipes coming out of it. I think that's where the energy is being generated. Oh gosh, I don't know anything about this. I am most definitely not Bill Nye the Science Guy. Matter of fact, I'm probably the last person on earth who should be making a video about this place, but I can't help it. I'm just so curious about it. Okay, wow, far out. I came all the way down the dirt road to where the pavement starts again, and well, you can't go any farther to the left. It says stop, no outlet, private road. But this road in front of us just parallels right along the old concentrated solar power plant, and it looks like we can get up pretty close to check it out. Before we go over there, I'm going to climb up on my car one more time, though, just to get a little bit better of an overview, now that we're down here up close and personal. I mean, if I zoom in now, boy, we can really see the details of this thing. Look at how that thing is glowing. I mean, that's got to be so hot. Okay, I just looked it up on Google, and it says that these towers heat the solution up to 550 degrees Celsius. I don't even know what that is in Fahrenheit, but that's how hot it is up there, and that's why it's glowing like that. Can you imagine 550 degrees Celsius? So apparently it's boiling and then going down the length of the tower there to those pipes. And, well, it is a pretty big building at the base, so I guess that is plenty big enough to house whatever kind of generators or turbines or whatever they are. Also, I should note, the reason this is called Ivanpah Solar Power Plant is Ivanpah, Ivanpah, kind of like Tonopah, but Ivanpah. Well, that's the name of that giant dry lake bed there on the other side of the freeway. So I guess that was just kind of maybe the name for this whole valley or basin or area. And well, when they built the solar plant, they had no choice but to name it Ivanpah. Although the governor of California at the time, who I guess okayed this plan, was Arnold Schwarzenegger. So they could have named it the Schwarzenegger concentrated solar plant, but for whatever reason they stick with Ivanpah, and maybe that's for the best. You also might be able to hear, I don't know if you can, there's kind of like this weird high-pitched whining sound, and I don't know, that might be from these heliostats, these mirrors, as they're moving to follow the sun. Can you hear that? Oh, it's kind of surreal. I'm guessing it's the sound of the heliostats moving, but it also might be because I was reading, I was talking earlier about how there was a number of controversies surrounding this project. Like, well, A, it's using too many fossil fuels, and B, they got too much special treatment from the government, and C, some other people complained that it wasn't producing what they promised that it would, and it didn't at first. Like, the first couple years it was operational, I don't even think it came near to the output that they claimed they were going to have. But over the years, they did make improvements, and now I think it's producing almost fully what they expected to produce. But there was another controversy, and well, that's kind of why, or part of the reason why there's this big fence here. The sign just says, high voltage, unauthorized personnel keep out. So yeah, obviously they don't want you going in there and messing with the solar plant. But I think this fence, more than being for people, is actually for animals. It's supposed to keep game out. Because I think there are maybe, well, there's bighorn sheep, burros, all kinds of critters live out here, bobcats, wildcats. They wanted to keep them out of the solar field. And that high-pitched whine, I thought, might be related to the mitigation tactics that they use to keep birds out. Because that's been another big source of controversy, is wildlife. Okay, the wildlife is being damaged by this solar power plant. Not just the birds, but also the desert tortoise. Okay, this is prime desert tortoise habitat, this part of the desert. And, well, I think they actually had to shut down construction for a while in 2010 because of the tortoise situation. And they did figure out a way to remedy that, and I'll show you that in a bit, hopefully. But as regards the birds, I guess the birds were flying over it and getting fried in the, like these mirrors that we're looking at here are basically concentrating the rays of the sun and sending them straight up into that tower there. Well, if a bird flies through the path of that concentrated beam of sunlight, zzzt, I think they call them streamers. I'm guessing because they leave a stream of smoke behind them. Like, they find dead birds out here all the time, and estimates vary widely. I think sort of like the generally accepted number is about 3,500 birds a year die out here from getting fried. But some nature group claimed it was more like 7,000, and so there was a big hubbub over that a few years ago. And well, it's hard to know who to believe. Like, I certainly feel for the birds. They were here first, and they deserve the right to fly back and forth through these skies just as much as I deserve the right to cheap power. Okay, even though they're not sending any of this power to Vegas, it's all going to Northern and Southern California. Well, it's still generating power, and well, by gum, I sure like my power. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to sit here and bellyache too much about, yeah, it is bad that some birds are dying, but oh gosh, it's just one of those complicated things where I can see both sides. So one of the tactics they used to try to keep birds from flying into this field was, what's it called? LRADs. LRAD. It's like long-range acoustical device, I think. It's like a device used by law enforcement sometimes at like protests or places where they use sound to repel people. Like, they play really loud or really high-pitched, annoying frequency sounds to keep people away. Well, there's a lot of controversy about that too, but I think they were using that to keep birds from flying in there. They're blasting some kind of weird high-pitched frequency into the air to keep birds away. So I thought for a minute that little high-pitched whine might have something to do with that, but I don't know. It seems like it'd be louder if that's what it was. Okay, anyway, enough blabbering for me. Let's see what we can see through this fence. And unfortunately, we can't see too much. All we see are a whole bunch of mirrors. And I don't know, I don't get why these mirrors are pointing that way. Like, the sun's over there. Doesn't seem like they're reflecting anything. And then, like, that one there is just flat, pointing straight up. I don't get it. Like, those ones over there seem like they're pointing the right way. They're cheated towards the sun and towards that tower. Man, I sure wish I could take a guided tour of this place with somebody who actually knew what they were talking about and could explain to me exactly what's going on here and why all these mirrors are pointed every which direction. Like, it almost seems like, well, a good number of them are just pointing straight up. So I don't know if that means they're broken or out of commission or what. Anyway, it's really interesting that you can basically just take the exit. Yates Well Road is the exit off I-15. You don't have to come in the crazy back way like I did. You can just get right off the highway, drive out here, and check this place out for yourself. As far as I know, there isn't any like visitor center or gift shop or anything. More's the pity. They could have all kinds of cool little reflective mirror doodads for sale. You know, I'd probably buy something. But it is fun. Just an excuse to get out of the car, stretch your legs, and I don't know, in my opinion, it's a lot more interesting than getting out in Prim and going to see Bonnie and Clyde's alleged death car. Okay, now let's cruise around the grounds a bit more, and I want to see if I can find this thing that I sort of referred to earlier as regards the desert tortoise. I was out here about 6 years ago, right after they first built it. And, well, they had this sort of feature back then that I'm hoping they still have because it was pretty interesting. Oh, yeah, see, over here, it looks like there are some kind of offices and buildings. That must be where everybody who works here. Oh, yeah, see, look, Ivanpah substation. And I think that was another source of controversy when they built this thing, you know, oh, it's going to create jobs. Well, it did create, I think, 1,000 jobs at the peak of construction. But then when they were done building it, well, this place basically runs itself. All these mirrors are automated. So I think there's only 86 people that work here. So essentially, all that created 86 jobs. Jobs! Okay, over here is a perfect example of this is the direction I would think all these mirrors would be facing because they're pointed right towards the sun and reflecting at that tower. So, gosh, they look amazing when they're all lit up like that. Like, how do they keep these mirrors so clean? You know, you think they'd be covered in like bird and bat poop. Okay, it's really hard to zoom in with this chain link fence, but you can see what I'm saying. Like, look how nice and shiny and clean those mirrors are. And you know there's a ton of birds and bats that are flying over this thing all day, every day because, well, we already went over that. How many of them are getting fried? Hey, speaking of that, I wonder if we'll find any dead birds or... Well, I also heard you can find dead tortoise piled up around this fence because tortoise, I guess, their instinct is to always go back to where they came from. So even though they, I'm assuming, went over this land before they built this and carefully removed all the desert tortoise and put them safely in a different part of the desert, those little tortoise, their little tortoise brain, all it tells them to do is to go back to where they're from. And so somebody told me, and I don't know if this is true or not, that because of that, they're all, as you can see, dead tortoise carcasses piled up against the fence. Maybe I should keep driving around the perimeter and just see what we see. Okay, well, I just drove around as much of the perimeter as I'm legally allowed to, I think. And I didn't see any dead birds or dead tortoise shells or tortoise carcasses. That's not to say that they don't exist, I just didn't see any. But I did, I think, finally find one of those things I wanted to show you. Okay, so there's this paved road that goes all around the perimeter of this solar plant. And then at places along the paved road, there's this weird thing you drive over, which is kind of like a... Well, it's kind of like this very shallow tunnel running under the road. And I'm pretty sure, or at least I was told, that the whole purpose of these things, it's basically a tunnel so that desert tortoise can safely cross the road without being hit by a car. Okay, if that doesn't beat all, the people who built this power plant went through great pains and trouble, probably under duress because they were being put the screws to by environmental groups to try and help these tortoise safely cross the road. Now, I guess the issue here is we're kind of outside of the area where all the heliostats are fenced in. So this is back out in open desert again. This is just an access road to get to the power plant. So to keep the tortoise from crossing the access road and getting squashed from one patch of open desert to another patch of open desert on either side of the road, well, they built this little underground tortoise expressway. So I guess the idea is if you're a tortoise living right over here in this beautiful patch of prime Mojave Desert real estate in the shadow of tower number 1 or number 3, whichever one that is, and you were just crawling along your way, and well, you were just crawling along the desert, poking around, looking for stuff to eat, just having a fine time living your tortoise life, well, then eventually you would come to this roadway, and well, your little tortoise brain wouldn't tell you that, oh gosh, these cars could kill me, I better stop. So there's a gap in the fence here that just sort of, I guess, funnels the tortoise down under the road. And then the tortoise crawls along slowly, but safely and securely, not getting squashed, all the way to the other side of the road. And then it comes back out here again into the desert. I hate to think how much whatever contractor built this little tortoise underpass charged them. You know, I'm sure it was a premium. And it's all very well and good. I'm actually a huge fan of the Mojave Desert Tortoise. I love the desert tortoise. They're so cute, and they're just sweet and non-assuming, and they're just minding their own business. So I'm all for spending some money to help them safely cross the road. It just kind of, I don't know. There is just something slightly bizarre about it. But I guess that's just what happens when environmentalists put the screws to you. You'll spend all kinds of money just to make them happy. Or maybe just to make them shut up and go away. Anyway, that's what's going on here at the old Yates Well Road exit off I-15. We've all driven it a billion times. Now we're standing on top of it. Yikes. I'm actually on this Yates Well Road overpass. But yeah, if you're ever curious and you want to check out that solar plant up close in person, just get off here and drive over, man. It's a trip. Like I said, it's a great excuse to get out and stretch your legs, and it's very interesting. Just make sure you don't run over any desert tortoise if you do so.